be good to have sound. Yes, you can hear me in the back? How many of you, this is your first conference by a show of hands? Awesome. Wow, that's so exciting. So you've never heard me speak. Wow. Well, you're probably wondering what the title of this talk means. Who should eat? Who's a little bit curious of what that means? Yeah, what does that mean? Did she get it wrong? Is the grammar wrong? What does that all mean? Okay, let's see. Let me ask you a few questions. Do you know if you've been born through cesarean section? Have you ever taken antibiotics, especially in the first 3 years of life? Have you eaten gluten, as in wheat, rye, or barley as the sources of gluten? Have you not played outdoors enough? Are you obsessed with a clean environment? Do you carry those sanitary sanitary napkins, the sanitary wipes? Have you eaten sugary foods? You try being up here. Have you eaten meat, fish, poultry, cheese, and dairy and foods regularly? Anybody? Does this apply to anybody? So we might have something to talk about today. I want to introduce a new term to you, the human superorganism, which is what you are, because you are made up of you and the world inside you, which is called your microbiome. Now, these factors have certainly impacted your microbiome, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What happens eventually over time is that we have inflammation, especially in the gut. On the left-hand side, you see a picture. I can get the pointer to work, maybe not. Right there, that's normal bowel, and that's normal microbiome, the genetic fingerprint. And then here on the right-hand side, you see inflammatory bowel syndrome, and the microbiota has also changed as a result. So Hippocrates said back in 460 BC, all diseases begin in the gut. What this is on the right-hand side is called dysbiosis. Symbiosis is when the microbiome lives peacefully within you, and dysbiosis is when there's a war in your intestines, in your intestine. And this is what we have to some extent, whether you've been diagnosed with something like this yourself or not quite yet. We all have inflammation in the gut because of the factors we just discussed. Now, this is a common analogy used in this field. Say you have think of a flourishing ecosystem in the gut as a wonderful green lawn. And then let's say you take antibiotics and you kill everything. And then if you leave that situation alone, what's going to grow back is weeds. So parasites are going to grow back. So we have some choices what to do. You can take probiotics. This means helpful bacteria. So you could go eat some yogurt maybe, or take some probiotic supplements. In fact, Juice Plus has some probiotics in it in itself. But there's some limitation to that because you can't go to the health food store and buy your microbiome, because your microbiome is very unique to you, much like a fingerprint. The second way is to actually feed the microbiome the food that it's looking for. And this, to me, is probably the most powerful strategy, as you'll learn. Or you can try to replace the bacteria, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. So for many years, we just thought, well, the function of the large intestine was basically to reabsorb water and salt and remove unused food debris. Now we're realizing it is precisely due to our microbiome in the gut and the microbiota that it contains that we are able to even live, as they give us all the genes and proteins our human genome does not encode. You can think of it as humans are actually the bystanders. It is the microbiota that does all the work. I was born and grew up in Calcutta, India for the first 8 years of my life. And you may think of it as a third world country, especially back then. But ironically enough, I was very healthy then, because I ate mostly a plant-based diet, and I was not exposed to modern medicine as we know it today. So my microbiome was in symbiosis. Then my parents moved to the United States when I was 8 years old, and I still was in good health until I went to college. I remember being at Cornell and seeing the all-you-can-eat buffet in the dormitories, and it just went downhill from there. My health habits got worse over time, and the more hours I spent in the lab, by the time I was a research scientist, I had a serious neck injury that was costing me a lot of money in physical therapy, and I was eating ibuprofen in bulk, buying it from Costco, and even though I was walking the halls with Nobel laureates, they could not help me with the challenges I had. And I was certainly in a state of dysbiosis now that I reflect back. So I started reading all kinds of articles. This was an article that came out in 1994, exposing us through the media to the word phytochemicals, plant nutrients that can help us. And so 22 years ago, I started a juicing regimen rather than a Vitamixing regimen, just turn the whole thing up, making these juices. And I remember sitting at my kitchen table, somebody had brought me a brochure on Juice Plus. It was ugly. We've come a long way. But it had some important information. It talked about how you'd have to juice the same 7 fruits and 8 vegetables that go into the orchard and garden blend. You'd have to have at least 1 glass, if not 4 glasses, to get the same nutrients without all the sugar. And this made all the sense in the world to me. In fact, my first thought was, I should have thought of this idea. It might be a stretch for most people to think, how can you put fruits and vegetables into a capsule? But for me, it was an easy concept to get because I was using the same technology in the laboratory to dehydrate cells. So this made all the sense in the world to me. I wanted to try it. I could not take vitamins for the life of me. I still, to this day, cannot take isolated vitamins. And I was impressed that I could keep this down on an empty stomach. I knew it was really food. But what I did not expect is that it would help me with my neck spasms. My physical therapist asked me, what are you doing differently? And I had to really think about it because I wasn't expecting this as a result. And thus began my journey to understand whole food nutrition. I learned that the enzymes such as pineapple, the bromelain in pineapple and the papain in papaya were natural anti-inflammatories that worked better than all the ibuprofen I was taking. And so I came full circle and I wanted to learn more about health, and I went on this sort of journey for many years. I went to Bali to become a certified yoga instructor. I went to Peru to become like a shamanic healer and all this stuff, and I still kept going to medical and science conferences. I wanted to learn as much as I could outside of the narrow thinking I was in just as a researcher alone. And I wrote several books, and my second book, Do You Have the Guts to Be Beautiful? We used that. All the practices in that book. I ran retreats for women for 5 years, and it was great. People would come to me in 7 days. I could create awesome results, but when they would go back home, their lifestyle would catch up with them, and so it was really hard to sustain. And then one year, a woman by the name of Kim Hughes showed up, and she came back a year later, and she was 10 dress sizes smaller. And she had been able to keep that off for 3 years. And I asked her, what are you doing differently? And she said, Mitra, the only way I could follow all your guidelines was to start doing 2 complete shakes a day. And this was sheer serendipity, because at that time I had been studying willpower. And I started to think to myself, well, now this is making a lot of sense, because if she's doing 2 meals where her blood sugar is stabilized by this low glycemic load meal, which is the complete, then she's going to have willpower, because willpower is basically a function of stabilize your blood sugar throughout the day. You see, if you take high sugary foods without much fiber in it, the sugar enters your blood way too quickly, and then you come crashing back down, and at the low end of that light blue curve, that's where you hate everybody. And you're an aggressive driver, and you make poor food choices. And imagine doing that to your brain 3 times a day. It doesn't really work. So here's the thing. After my talk today, all of you'll probably want to have a salad for lunch. That's what your brain will say up here. But you have a second brain, your gut brain, your enteric brain. And your enteric brain is going to say, nope, I want the cheeseburger and fries. Thank you very much. So there's a conflict, okay? There's 2 brains. And here's the thing. Your gut, the microbiome in your gut, those are tricky little guys. They're making neurotransmitters. They're making 75% of the neurotransmitters that dictate your desires and actions. Oh, so you're not really you. You're a world within yourself. And that's why 50 to 80% of people fail when they try to change their lifestyle habits. In 1990, we began the Human Genome Project. And we were all excited. We thought we would understand everything once we identified all the genes, and then we could use gene therapy to clear up all the problems. In fact, what happened was that we had to become quite humble about the whole situation. Turns out we're just not much different than chimpanzees and gorillas. That was very humbling. What's even more humbling is that a simple earthworm has 4 times more genetic material than we do. How does that work? How can a human being have 1/4 of the genes that an earthworm has? Well, you ever look at some of your family members and you wonder if they're really the same species as you? Here's some naked sadhus that have given up all their worldly possessions, and they're really in need of a haircut and a shave in India. And then here's some women in Hollywood that could certainly afford some more clothing than they're wearing. And you'll have to wonder, are they really the same species? You like that? In 2001, the word microbiome was introduced to us. And in 2007, we started the Human Microbiome Project because of incredible breakthroughs in sequencing technology. If we compare sequencing technology to the IT industry, the IT industry has put cell phones into 6 billion humans' hands, and only 1 billion are left without a cell phone. And look at what happened in 2007 compared to the IT industry. If you look at the green curve, this is the sequencing industry. The cost of sequencing genomes has become so much cheaper and so much faster as well, is that we are now gaining data at a fast and furious pace, and this has become what we call big data science, and it has become an incredibly collaborative and exciting field, and it is changing our world. I'm going to have to share some biology with you. I hope you get as excited as I am about this. I'm sorry. Back in 1859, Charles Darwin proposed the tree of evolution, and you might have seen something like this studying biology in school. And in this picture, you think that plants and animals dominate, the big creatures dominate the planet, right? That's what we see, so that's what we think. And in fact, genetic sequencing has shown that yes, we are indeed all related. All these big animals that we see and trees. But we are multicellular organisms, and we actually don't make up most of the living organisms on this planet. Now this new genetic sequencing information has shown that we've been ignoring this whole world of bacterial colonies. Before, all we could study was what we could culture. But now we can sequence much more than we can culture. And this world has shrunk down. And what we are seeing is that now it only comprises a very small portion of this bigger genetic tree. Oh, help me out here. Okay, so all these bacteria, archaea, and eukaryotes, these are all the living organisms on the planet that are single cell. And right here, this little graph, if I take that away, that is basically all the trees, all the mammals, and all the fungi. So most of the world is actually populated with single cell organisms. What we're good at doing is stacking up a bunch of cells, and let's just stack up a bunch of cells and make it a liver, right? But all the real tricky molecular biochemistry has been worked out by those single-cell organisms. And so it is within us. Just like we are a small part of this planet, inside us, there's a world within us that is also microorganisms. For all the 10 trillion cells in the human body, there's 100 trillion microbial cells. And as far as genetic material goes, it's even less, because less than 1% of your DNA inside your physical being is human DNA. So when you think, you know those surveys that say, what's your family history? Do you have diabetes in your family? Do you have cancer in your family, Alzheimer's? Forget about it. The only thing you inherited is a bad lifestyle. The only thing you inherited, it's not really part of the equation that much as you think, because we inherited 2 parallel genomes. The first is from our parents, and it's basically very stable DNA. And there's little variance between people. But what really confers human diversity is the microbial DNA. and we inherit it from our mother, and it's extremely dynamic, and there's great variance between people. That's what separates each of us, is really our microbiome. And sequencing has allowed us to see that there's different kinds of species that live in different parts of the body. The most interesting, as it turns out, for scientists is to study the vagina and the colon. Yes, we're going there, so hang on. Put your seatbelts on. So Rob Knight is a giant in the field, and it's really fascinating, some of the information that he's come up with. So we are noticing now, a lot of, and I'm going to use my pulpit here because there's so many women, and especially young women, coming into the world of Juice Plus, that I'm absolutely going to take advantage of this opportunity right here to push some personal agendas. Is that okay with you? Okay. So here's the thing. A lot of women are being encouraged to have elective C-sections. Now, I'm really glad that C-section exists as a choice for people in emergency situation, but it should not be an elective choice. The reason is because one of the most important things we can do for an unborn child is to do our best to have a vaginal birth. Because if you look at the microbiome of the mother and look at the microbiome of the new infant, basically, when you have a vaginal birth, the child inherits the microbiome of his or her mother. Whereas if you have a C-section, they inherit the microbiome of the mother's skin. Not very helpful at all, actually. So it's really, really important. In fact, that's not the only thing that's important. It's really important for us to get a little dirty, if you will. So we should be more like birds. We should be digesting, masticating our food for our children. We should be breastfeeding. We should have a lot of skin-to-skin contact. And what we should avoid is bottle feeding, early extensive bathing of your child, early life antibiotics, and certainly cesarean sections as much as we can, because there's so much powerful information. It's actually profound to think that the entire intelligence and lineage and again, it's the moms, that carry this intelligence and lineage and pass it on to our progeny. And it's a shame to cut that off, because it has taken you a while to learn how to live peacefully with your microbiome, and you want to pass that on to your child as quickly as you can. Now, I want to share some results with you. Lindsay, I'm going to start with the story of her skin. Lindsay had skin issues. Now, she was a personal trainer. She is a personal trainer, and she was very fit, and yet she had all these skin issues. But not only that, she was having trouble getting pregnant. After Juice Plus and using Juice Plus and Juice Plus Complete, her skin cleared up. But not only that, she got pregnant. And then, I've written a lifestyle program using these products, and one of the things that it does is reduce systemic inflammation in the body. If you have inflammation in the gut, which is what she had, it's going to spread throughout the body because of this continuous system called the lymphatic system, which is much like your circulatory system. And so it showed up in her skin. Her skin clears up. She's able to get pregnant. The thing is, if your immune system is at war, you cannot get pregnant, because just like a country cannot build infrastructure within the country when it's at war outside the country, it's the same thing for us. And then after she got pregnant, she lost the weight really quickly, and then she got pregnant again. She's about to deliver again. So instead of looking at all these expensive, she and her husband were looking at all these other ways of getting pregnant, and it just was as simple as getting on Juice Plus and Complete and reducing the inflammation. So please give your unborn baby the gift of Juice Plus and the plant power of Juice Plus. I had 2 incredibly healthy births because of using these products, and I can't say enough about starting life that way. And also, it's really important to realize how, don't let your kids get dirty. Let them play in the dirt. Let them pick their butt, pick their nose, all that good stuff. It's all good. Because what happens when microbiome is not transferred is we see a rise in autoimmune diseases such as celiac. In fact, we have been able to, in the last century, reduce infectious diseases, but we are seeing a rise in all these autoimmune diseases. And all these factors play a role. You see, in the gut is the first line of defense. Every time you eat, you're either starting a war or maintaining peace within you. Because that lining of the intestine is lined with all kinds of immune cells that are there. The epithelial cells are there, and then the intestinal dendritic cells, they send out little periscopes to see what did she eat today? Uh-oh. Do we have some parasites coming in that we're feeding? And then they send information to the B cells and the T cells that then go to war. And so we have to maintain peace within our intestines. So what's happening is that the gut-associated lymphatic tissue is actually 60 to 80% of your immune function. And you train that within the first 3 to 4 years of life. So we have to be compassionate when we look at a child that's maybe has had different eating patterns than we would like. And because he or she also has 2 brains, right? And we have to train that enteric brain, that gut brain. Thank God for the Children's Health Study, because what we know is we can retrain that brain because they are craving more fruits, 60% more fruits and vegetables, and some 40% less soft drinks and fast food. That means we can retrain the brain by giving them Juice Plus. Stories like this really touch my heart. Karen Duncan was really suffering with her children. They're going in and out of the hospitals all their lives, missing 20, 30 school days a year, spending so much money on alternative medicine as well as normal medicine. And basically, she skeptically started Juice Plus because she was running out of options. And after being on the Children's Health Study, her kids are now attending school and using that is to do fecal transplants. But that raises some questions because you don't want the poop of a homicidal psychopath. And there's a lot to consider in this approach. This is a serious field of research. Don't laugh. But this is what we mean by bacteriotherapy. I'd like to talk about back to Kim's story and why she did so well by incorporating these products into her diet. What is willpower? You know, why do carbohydrates make such a difference? Well, there's all kinds of carbohydrates that you can choose that are out there. There's green and non-starchy vegetables. There's whole grains, rice, quinoa, millet, tapioca, semolina, starchy vegetables. Potatoes get a bad name. There's nothing wrong with potatoes. It's just what you put on them. And fruits. And then there's the bad guys, the soda pop, the sweet drinks, the fried foods, the highly processed grains, and the sugary cereals. What makes the good stuff good, number one, is fiber, because fiber feeds your good microbiome. And also the micronutrients that we utilize, or the microbiome also utilizes. And so these are prebiotics, food for your microbiome. On the other side is parasite food. Parasite food, that's what it is. Now, when we say eat mostly a plant-based diet, people say, where do I get my protein? Have you heard that question? Let's look at some facts. If we take 500 calories worth of tomatoes, spinach, lima beans, peas, and potatoes, and compare it to 500 calories worth of beef, pork, chicken, and whole milk, guess what? All living organisms have protein, because proteins are enzymes that carry out biochemical reactions. So plants are doing plenty of biochemical work, and they have plenty of protein, and they are the only lean source of protein. Both sources have equal amounts of protein. However, the plant sources have 4 grams of fat, and these are the omega fats that you're looking for, whereas the animal sources have 9 times more fat, and this is the saturated fat that you don't want, that would be clogging your arteries. It is also the only source of cholesterol in your diet. Plants don't have cholesterol. Instead, they have the antioxidants, the micronutrients, and look at that, 31 grams of fiber. No fiber in the animal category. So what the animal category is a source of parasites as well as food for the parasites in your body. Now, I'm not trying to turn everybody into a vegan. You know, if you want to have steak or sushi or whatever your favorite food is, you know, that's fine. I just don't want you to think you're doing it for your health because you need the protein. You know, I'll have a glass of champagne right after this talk, probably. And but I'm pretty clear that the reason I'm not doing it is for my health, you know, like drinking wine for the antioxidants. I don't really, no. Okay, so When you talk about high fat and high sugar diets, what we're really talking about is animal products and bad carbohydrates that lead to obesity. And obesity is the result of this war within our gut. So remember, your gut voice is 100 times louder, and we have to retrain that enteric brain. So here's a lifestyle challenge that I've put forth. Basically, you say yes to Juice Plus products, you drink lots of water, you exercise, you consume 0 wheat, 0 dairy, especially just for 30 days, reduce your stress, get enough sleep, don't eat late night meals, and don't worry about counting calories. And you reduce all the bad stuff, the preservatives, the colors, the sweeteners, the chemicals, the caffeine, the saturated fat and cholesterol, which means animal products, refined sugar, hydrogenated fats, and alcohol. Now, what happens for people? You see, when people are worried about protein and using those whey powders and whatnot, think of protein as a chain of amino acids. It's like a pearl necklace, and we need to break down that necklace into individual amino acids, into the individual pearls. If we don't, then it triggers the immune system. Here's a testimonial. Vicky Martini, veteran personal trainer with over 25 years of experience. After being hospitalized for toxic levels of undigested whey protein in my gut, all in an attempt to achieve optimal fitness, I began to seek answers. I have experienced metabolic burnout, high protein ketosis from competing in bodybuilding fitness events, and most recently, adrenal exhaustion. That's what happens with too much whey. Transform 30 has helped save me, my health, my profession with Juice Plus. When I say thank you, Mitra, I really, really mean thank you. Another gal, Serena, she was trying to win a fitness competition and using whey proteins. When she switched over to the complete and the capsules, she finally won that competition. You've probably heard Tim Emmett's, is he here? Thank you for that testimonial yesterday. It is something that absolutely works for athletes. It's not just for weight loss. So why have you not heard of this before? You see, it takes a while for science to really disseminate. In 1881, the blood pressure monitor was invented, but it wasn't until 1901 that was modernized and popularized. So more stories. We can transform that gut brain. Lynn in Indianapolis lost 40 pounds in 4 months. She is off all her meds, including high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes medicines, no more hormonal hot flashes and insomnia, feeling great, loves T30, and is continuing with the capsules and the shakes. Dina here was diagnosed with MS, legally blind, walking with a cane, and on 10 medications. She changed her cravings, is now following a whole food, plant-based lifestyle, cane-free, off 9 meds, and in control of her MS and down 7 dress sizes. I love Michelle's story because not only did she lose weight, she got taller, which is really excellent. No, you carry yourself differently when there's less weight weighing you down, you know. Michael Yak here was 311 pounds in March of last year. He's already lost over 80 pounds now. So it's an ongoing, it works to feed your microbiome. And that's really what we're here to talk about, how Juice Plus feeds your good microbiome. I know this, I can extrapolate that because you can't get these kinds of results without changing your microbiome. And we already heard from Dr. Nijon and Dr. Lamprecht about the polyphenols. Here's a little twist to the story. You need your microbiome to actually process those polyphenols that you find in the Juice Plus powders, and because it is the microbiome that actually makes those nutrients bioavailable to us. And that is perhaps why the combination of capsules and complete works so well, because the complete is also really good food for your healthful bacteria because it has got a fiber mix and it's got something called resistant starches, which are starches that we cannot break down. And that really feeds your microbiome. Here's another giant in the field, Eric Alm, and he and his colleagues studied over 300 different factors for a year. Imagine taking poop samples for a year. Big data. And the only thing that he found that created a huge significant change in the microbiome was fiber. For every 10-gram increase in fiber, basically if you have more good bacteria and more variety of good bacteria in your gut, the healthier you will be. And so if we look at the Human Microbiome Project and we look at the analysis of microbiome in the United States, which is the orange data points, we see that we have a very limited amount of microbiome diversity compared to nomadic tribes that live in South America and Africa. So I don't think that we're going to be able to adapt that lifestyle. But here's the thing, nomadic people consume about 100 grams of fiber compared to the recommended 30 here. So for every serving of Juice Plus Complete, you're going to get 10.5 grams of fiber. And this fiber then gets broken down and turned into small chain fatty acids that help decrease the pH in our intestine and stool and also prevents the growth of pathogen and encourages beneficial bacterial growth. They digest these bacteria and give us important nutrients like butyrate. I can't go into all of them, but butyrate is a small chain fatty acid that's very important for all kinds of different important functions in the body that we can't make ourselves. Our microbiome has to make it for us. A few other suggestions. You know, the only thing good about the Atkins diet is the part about giving up gluten. Because every time you eat gluten, it opens up your intestinal wall for 20 minutes and it causes a war right then and there. And based on other lifestyle factors, that opening can last much longer. And gluten also opens up the blood-brain barrier, causing autism, Alzheimer's, and legal blindness. So gluten is something that people think that they're not sensitive to. Give it up for 30 days and you'll see how sensitive you are. The same, because gluten is a protein like that string of pearls, we can't break it down. And you see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 domains that trigger the immune system in 5 different ways and starts a little war in our body. Zero dairy, why? Well, because casein is the most prevalent protein in milk and it is the biggest promoter of cancer. And it's time for us to wean ourselves off of that for sure. Avoid eating late night meals. This is really important for us because electricity has messed up our systems. We eat late night meals now, and we didn't evolve to eat late night meals. Your microbiome actually follows a circadian rhythm. If you eat during the when the sun is out, that's when you should eat, and you should eat regular meals if you can at regular times, because then your body's just ready for a meal. It's like every organ and every bacteria needs to get the memo that you're going to eat something. If you just surprise the body with food, it's not quite ready and it messes up the system. So basically, if the intact host, the little plate, the white plate with the clock, that's you eating properly during daylight hours at the same time every day, then what happens is everything works smoothly. During the day, you're metabolizing energy and your cells are growing and you're repairing DNA. At night, you're detoxifying the body. Motility means you're moving poop out of the body, and environmental sensing, and everything's working great. If you mess that up, let's say jet lag or late shift work or things like that, then you have this dysbiosis that leads to inflammation and obesity. Also, avoid artificial sweeteners. A lot of people know that soda is bad for you. Well, artificial sweeteners are probably worse. People who consume artificial sweeteners are 47% more likely to be overweight. So basically, the point is eat whole foods, mostly plants, avoid processed foods, avoid animal-based products. Now, this is a story that might be interesting to you, or you might think it's way too geeky, but I'll tell you anyway. So the bacteria, if sex is considered the exchange of DNA, let's say, then human beings are really prudish compared to bacteria. They are like wild, okay? They do they have sex cross species. They're uninhibited in their sex life completely, okay? They know no boundaries. So basically, marine bacteria have stolen a gene from marine algae that breaks down certain fibers in marine algae so that it can eat marine bacteria. And then we find that in the gut microbiome of Japanese people who eat a lot of seaweed, we also find this gene. So there's this transfer from plant to bacteria in the ocean to bacteria in the gut. And so when you start looking at these kinds of horizontal gene transfers, it's happening all the time in your gut. It's kind of like a Star Wars bar scene with interspecies mingling. It's crazy down there. So Every time you eat, I want you to understand you're taking in antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Actually, you're also taking in antibiotics because subtherapeutic amounts of antibiotics are given to animals to fatten them up, because we know taking antibiotics causes obesity. So that's a fast way to fatten up farm animals. And so what happens is that, you may have heard that the reason we have more antibiotic-resistant bacteria today is because doctors are overprescribing antibiotics, right? Not true at all. It's because we're eating meat. So in the EU, it's the same thing. They use antibiotics. And I can't even begin to explain the science on this chart here, but what it's showing is that in our gut, we take in that bacteria, and then other bacteria steal the antibiotic-resistant gene, and then we poop out more bacteria onto the planet that is antibiotic resistant. So we are the cause, our dietary habits are the cause of more antibiotic resistant bacteria. I'm sorry to give you that bad news. So, here's a really sexy picture of Lisa Edelstein for people for the ethical treatment of animals. There's a lot of reasons, whether it's ethical, whether it's environmental, but mostly for your health, that you should eat more of a plant-based diet. So this is all really cool, but I want to tell you that Richard Simmons figured this out a long time ago. He told us this back in the 80s. This is actually a cover of a Life magazine. So you can get your sexy back. And while we can't go back to a nomadic lifestyle, I think all these plants can help us bridge the gap to eat more variety of plants and deal with some of these issues that we've all been exposed to. And my book also has other ways of cleaning out the liver and the gut that might be helpful to you. I was looking on Amazon, and I was blown away that there are people in America, like 9 different sources, selling my books internationally for like $2,000 almost, and I am not getting a penny of that. It's not going to cost you that much here. But what I wish for all of you here today is peace, love, and understanding between you and your microbiome. So think about that every time you eat. Thank you.
Passport in your bikini, you need a holiday. Come see me. I know you're tired of the